Hi everyone, it's Michael, and I thought this day might never come. I can't tell you how pleased I am to be doing a bloom profile for number 13 in my orchid collection, what was previously a no ID Phragmipedium, but has since been identified as the Phragmipedium Sedenii. Oh my goodness, get a load of these beautiful, delicate little lady slippers. Oh, so stunning, and this plant has been on quite a journey. Now, before I really get into this plant, I just want to say a huge thank you to you, my fabulous community, for helping me positively ID this plant. It is one of the greatest and most exhilarating feelings to care for a plant for years and then discover what it is later, because, you manage to succeed with it without really knowing its temperament, without really knowing its lineage or, its direct care instructions. So I have to say specifically thank you to Simply Bee. Simply Bee nailed it when I said, hey, what are these blooms? Immediately said Phrag Sedenii. But also thank you to Michael McCarthy, Blue Aquatics, for putting out really great suggestions that allow me to cross-reference multiple species and really verify that I have the right one. But I just can't get enough of these gorgeous blooms. What a strange history this plant has had with me. Again, at number 13 in my collection, I've had it for quite some time, so this has endured a lot of mistreatment and a lot of experimentation. But wow, way to make a recovery, way to bounce back. Without further lead-in, let's just go in and take a closer look at this beauty.
We are looking at number 13 in my orchid collection, my Phragmipedium Sedenii. I've also heard this name pronounced Phragmipedium Sedenii. I purchased this orchid on May 22nd of 2017 from Paulino Gardens in Denver, Colorado. This stunning hybrid was created in 1873 and is descended from parent plants Phragmipedium longifolium and the Phragmipedium schlimmii or schlimmii. The adaptation of this plant to semi-hydroponics has been peculiar to say the very least, and is characterized by distinct chapters of resistance and acceptance of this grow method. This plant did not appear to care for straight semi-hydroponics and kept losing leaves and drying out repeatedly. During a particularly experimental chapter, I transitioned this plant into an aquarium setup, meaning that I drilled additional holes and used an aquarium pump to oxygenate the water, believing that this would mitigate this plant's distaste for still water. I was mistaken, and the plant still did not thrive under these conditions. It was only when I transitioned this plant back to semi-hydroponics and incorporated a top dressing of sphagnum moss that the root system began to thrive. It threw out so many new roots and quickly came to occupy the entire container. Today it is incredibly vigorous and drinks a great amount of water. And while it still dislikes still water, as long as you continuously refresh the reservoir, it seems to do just fine. For that reason, this orchid receives weekly flushes, unlike the remainder of my collection, which receives monthly flushes. In regard to ideal lighting, it is highly variable. Common care instructions for this plant dictate that it should be kept in bright indirect to medium light, but I find that it is the most vigorous when I grow it in the same light that I grow my Cattleya orchids. I am certainly not suggesting that you grow all of your Phragmipediums under these lighting conditions, but I will say that it stimulated very vigorous growth and gorgeous blooms this year. Now speaking to the flowering timeline, the first flower spike began to appear on September 4th, but didn't begin to open until October 18th. This means that from the moment you first see signs of a flower spike, you can expect just over a month-long incubation period before you see blooms. The brief wait is well worth the reward, because this plant is a sequential bloomer, and will produce stunning flowers successively off the same flower spike over the course of a few months. In total, I anticipate that this plant will stay in bloom for just over 3 months, but it does have the exciting capacity to bloom twice per year. As always, I will update the description of this video to reflect the exact bloom timeline every time this plant flowers. The life cycle of each individual bloom can last about 3 to 4 weeks, but what I find even more interesting is how the blooms drop when they're done. They don't even begin to fade or dry, they fall altogether intact. Speaking now to the blooms themselves, you can see that each sequential bloom has its own unique patterning, although they are all a beautiful shade of white and pink. Petals and sepals transition effortlessly from snow white to blush pink, but the lip is really where we see the greatest source of variation. This particular bloom is a vivid shade of fuchsia accompanied by a white stripe right down the middle. Its sibling bloom, however, lacks this distinctive marking and is instead a monochromatic fuchsia. Both blooms have a gorgeous speckled throat and a buttery yellow column. From the signature shape of these blooms, it's easy to see that this Phragmipedium belongs to the gorgeous subfamily of lady slipper orchids. These blooms are also relatively compact, standing about 2 inches tall and 2.5 inches wide.
In regard to the fragrance components of this plant, it has no discernible scent. Not even that vague floral that you get sometimes when you put your nose really, really closely to a bloom. So who knows, I've had the experience where plants have developed more intense fragrance as the plant matures and gets more healthy, but I don't anticipate that will be the case for this one. But I'm just so excited. This has been in bloom for so long. I can't wait to see how long it continues to bloom. I am just so happy. This is honestly such a triumph for me because getting a Phragmipedium was ambitious for me as somebody who had no clue what I was doing. So the fact that I managed to nurse this plant over the course of multiple years without killing it to a point where it was ready and healthy enough to bloom brings me intense satisfaction. And this is what it's all about. So thank you for sharing this celebration with me. I so appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. Don't forget to support one another in the comment section because I'm so seldom available to do so. Don't forget to click subscribe and have a beautiful rest of your day. Mwah! Bye, friends.